Yet another Dell Optiplex gaming PC build guide. Wait, before you go, I know that this is my third gaming PC Optiplex build, but this one here is a $200 version and what I think is the absolute sweet spot. So if you're thinking about building a Dell Optiplex gaming PC, then you don't want to miss this video. Let's get into it. Hey, welcome to Zach's Tech Turf. Today we're going to be taking a look at this $200 gaming PC build, benchmarking it, and showing you how to build one for yourself. And if you want to see more PC building or benchmarking videos, then hit that subscribe button down below and also that notification bell. That way you never miss an episode. But yeah, let's check this thing out. Alright, so you guys know the drill by now. Before getting into the upgrade list, let's take a look at our starting point. This here is a Dell Optiplex 3010, which I personally paid $100 for using the Mercari app. This OEM desktop is packing an Intel i5-3470, which is clocked at 3.2 GHz. It has 8 GB of DDR3 RAM, and it came with a 500 GB hard drive. I've said this in my other Optiplex build guides, and I'll say it again. The Dell Optiplex is a perfect starting point if you're thinking about building your first budget gaming PC build, and if you're gonna pick one up, then just make sure it has a decent processor in it like an i3 or an i5, and definitely 8 GB of RAM. Before you ever start to throw parts in a build like this though, I would definitely recommend booting it up first just to make sure everything works. Afterwards, I personally did a quick vacuum job to blow out all the dust. I swapped out the old thermal paste with some Arctic MX4, which I'll link down in the description, and I fully reinstalled Windows 10. After all that, the very first upgrade I did was the power supply, specifically this EVGA 430 watt PSU, but you can really go with any power supply that's 400 to 500 watts as long as you only pay about $20 for it. I personally also found this EVGA 500 watt power supply on Prime Day for just $25, so they're not that hard to find. Now, one thing to note here though is that you don't technically need 430 watts of power for this build, but I always think it's a good idea to throw in a better power supply instead of the one that it comes with. Not only do you have enough wattage for future upgrades, but this way you're ensuring that your parts are safe, especially compared to that stock 250 watt PSU that comes in the Optiplex. Moving on, the next upgrade in this $200 Optiplex build has got to be a graphics card, and I personally went with this Asus GTX 750 Ti, which I personally picked up for $50. The 750 Ti that's in there does require a 6-pin power connector from the PSU, but you could always find one like this Zotac mini model that doesn't require one. It just all depends on if you actually did that power supply upgrade or not and what kind of deals you may find. And finally, the last upgrade I did for this build was an SSD, specifically this 120 GB Kingston model that I found on Newegg for exactly 30 bucks. You could definitely find a used one for around 20, then use that extra money elsewhere, maybe upgrade to a 1 TB hard drive, but that's up to you. If you guys have watched my other build guides, then you'll already know that I throw an SSD in almost every build that can afford it. It's just night and day difference when you have your operating system and most used programs and games loaded on there. It's almost mandatory in my book. Before getting into the benchmarks of this build, please be aware that this i5-3470 can definitely handle a bit beefier of a graphics card, and so can our power supply. As you'll notice in these upcoming games, the GPU usage was almost at 100% the entire time, which does indicate a little bit of a bottleneck, so feel free to throw in a bit beefier of a graphics card if you want to. I just threw in the 750 Ti to keep this build under 200 bucks, and they're stupid easy to find these days. The first game up was CSGO like usual, and in 1080p in high settings and no anti-aliasing, my usual benchmarking settings, this PC cranked out an FPS average of 169. Very impressive, but keep in mind that this game is mostly CPU bound and doesn't utilize the GPU that much. Next up was Dota 2, another easy to run game, and in 1080p in high settings we averaged 104 frames per second. Like I say in all my benchmarking videos, please ignore the noob gameplay against the bots. Fortnite was up next because how can you possibly have a benchmarking video without Fortnite? And in 1080p medium settings with 100% resolution scale, this Optiplex build could average right above that 60 FPS mark. Getting into the tougher to run games, PlayerUnknown's Battlegrounds was up next, and in 1080p in very low settings we averaged right on that 60 FPS mark. If you remember the $150 Optiplex build from a few weeks ago, I had to put the settings in 720p, so it was nice to see the 750 Ti allow us to get into the 1080p resolution. And finally, the last game on our benchmarking run was Far Cry 5, 5, which is an insanely tough game to run, and in 720p in low settings it averaged a very impressive 60 FPS. You could definitely crank the settings up to 1080p if you wanted to, but you'll only get around 30-ish FPS, so I think it's best to stick to 720p for this game. Once again, for the third time now, I'm very impressed with how this Dell Optiplex build turned out. It's just so easy to find one of these OEM desktops for around $100, put a few upgrades in there, and then you easily transformed it into a very capable 1080p gaming PC. Be sure to let me know down in the comment section what you added to your Optiplex build or what you plan to add if you're going down this route. Well, that wraps up my $200 Dell Optiplex gaming PC build guide. Now that I've made 3 Optiplex builds, I'm going to make a video that showcases all 3 of them with the upgrade list and the benchmarks. That way you can compare them side by side and see what's best for you, so make sure you stay tuned for that. Well, I hope you guys enjoyed this video. Please drop a like down below to help support my channel, and as always, thank you for watching, and please subscribe for more Zach's Tech Turf videos.